for sure. But we're going to move into the tight end position. And I'm going to start off. Number 1, I have George Kittle. When you look at what George Kittle can be, obviously, I think Travis Kelce has been more reliable as far as the injuries. But going into this year, I just think Kittle is the best blocking tight end I've ever seen. He is such a monster. And for me, I think that just barely puts him a tick ahead of Kelce. But when people get upset, how do you have Kelce over Kittle? How do you have Kittle over Kelce? How do you have Darren Waller over those two? Like, I think those three are all in their own tier. And that's the thing that I think gets lost on people. So I have Kittle at 1, Kelce at 2, Waller at 3. Then I have TJ Hawkinson going into 2021 at 4. I'm expecting a huge leap. I'm expecting Jared Goff to use him a ton. Early on in Jared Goff's Rams career, he was using guys like Lance Kendricks. He was using guys like Tyler Higbee. And I expect him to do the same as he gets comfortable with this offense. And let's be honest here, TJ Hawkinson can stay on the field because the man can block too. Number 5, Mark Andrews. I think he's going to be in for his best season this year with Lamar Jackson. Number 6, I have Dallas Goedert. Now, this might shock some people. Fantasy-wise, I'm not saying go out and get Dallas Goedert on your fantasy team. But when you look at what he does on film, he's a super well put-together tight end. And that is why when you see all this stuff about Zach Ertz, will he stay with this team, will he not? The reason he's become expendable is because Dallas Goedert is a freaking awesome tight end. I mean, let's just call it like it is. Well-rounded, does a little bit of everything super well. Number 7 is still Rob Gronkowski. You got to keep him in the top 10 because he's still producing. I don't care if he's with Tom Brady. He's still producing. I can't penalize him because he's with Tom Brady. Number 8, Mike Gesicki. I'm expecting him to take that next step. I thought he was very impressive last year with Ryan Fitzpatrick. As long as Tua Tagovailoa continues to develop and stays healthy, I think they can really develop a nice rapport there. And then I have number 9, Jonnu Smith. I think Jonnu Smith is awesome. And the problem with him was, we're injuries. I mean, let's be real here in Tennessee. But one thing that's interesting is that Jonnu Smith doesn't get enough credit for his ability as a blocker. A lot of those plays last year, when you saw Ferkser catching touchdowns and what have you, they had Jonnu Smith blocking. I mean, this is somebody that they trust to block. So now he comes to New England, and the fact that he can do a little bit of everything, they're going to be able to use him and Hunter Henry well. And then 10, man, it's so hard because I honestly kind of want to put Gerald Everett here with the Seahawks. I think Gerald Everett's going to have a monster season in Seattle because basically every Seattle Seahawk tight end has had good seasons, and I think he's the most talented. He averaged the most yards of separation of any tight end in the league last year. Jared Goff just couldn't get him the football. Tyler Higbee is certainly here. I honestly, Irv Smith is a guy that I'm even considering here. I think Irv Smith is somebody to watch. I'm going to stick with Tyler Higbee because I do think Tyler Higbee is better than advertised. And here's why. Tyler Higbee is probably not going to go for over 700 yards receiving. He's probably not going to be in competition with Kittle, Kelce, and Waller. He doesn't have to be. What Tyler Higbee does well is he's gotten better as a blocker. He can get open. He is a physical tight end. He can make plays in the red zone. And the fact of the matter is this, the situation there, his stats won't be that great, right? But when you take Tyler Higbee and you put him on the Rams with Stafford and all of his weapons, and he amounts to 500 to 600 yards, that's like 1,000-yard season on like the Jaguars. So I guess that's kind of where I'm going with this. I do think he's better than advertised, and so I do think he deserves credit as the number 10 tight end. But, I mean, Irv Smith, I think, is also in for a huge year, and so is Gerald Everett. They'll probably have better statistical outputs than Tyler Higbee, but I think Higbee is probably a more seasoned veteran and a better tight end. If you need to go with one for one game, to say you're going to the Super Bowl, you had to pick one, that's probably the one I'd go with.
Yeah, no, I like your list, Jake. We differ on a couple of guys, but for the most part, we have 8 of our 10 are in the top 10. So I'll share my list now. Let's see. Our top 2 are flipped. I have Travis Kelce at 1 and George Kittle at 2. I just think that Kelce is he's the catalyst for that Chiefs offense. When he doesn't play or when his game is off, it's pretty obvious. Mahomes is obviously Mahomes, but when Kelce's not at his best, that offense just isn't quite as good as it can be. Kittle, he's very good. I do think he needs to stay. He has dealt with injuries, so that's why I don't think he's number one like Kelsey is. Waller, his story, the story of his career is just kind of incredible to me. Just all his journey, what he's gone through, and now he's the third best tight end in the league, and arguably the best receiver on that Raiders team. And number 4, I have TJ Hawkinson. I'm excited to see how Jared Goff uses him because they don't have a lot of wide receivers there in Detroit. So they have TJ Hawkinson and a bunch of guys. So Hawkinson really could be the featured receiver in that Lions offense. At number 5, I have someone that you didn't have on your list. I have Noah Fant. I think he showed some really promising stuff last year. And if Drew Lock can't succeed with Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, and Noah Fant, as well as all the other guys that they have in that receiving core, it's time for the Broncos to move on because Fant has all the potential. He showed some really good things last year, and I'm excited to see what he does this year. Number 6, I have Mark Andrews. Number 7, I have Jonnu Smith. I'm excited to see what he does in New England. They have a really good duo because right behind him, I have the other Patriots tight end, Hunter Henry. And then number 9, I have a third former Patriots tight end this time. I have Rob Gronkowski. And then rounding out my top 10 will be the one instance maybe where my Rams fandom comes into play in this list. And I have Tyler Higbee right there.
We both put Tyler Higbee at 10.
I just like, and it's not that he's like, I don't think it's that far fetched to put him there. Yes, no, he doesn't have the best numbers, but when you look deeper in those numbers and look at the analytics and look what he does on film, like, he is right there at the top 10 guys, and we've seen what he can do when he is a featured guy. I mean, look at the end of 2019 where he went off. And this year, the Rams don't have a lot of tight end. They have Tyler Higbee, Johnny Munz, like he's a blocking tight end, and then they have 2 unproven guys in Jacob Harris and Bryson Hopkins. Yeah, Bryson Hopkins. I get him and Perkins mixed up all the time. So I just think he's a tight end. He's arguably the third receiver, the third option in this Rams offense. So I think putting Stafford in at quarterback could really give him a boost.
Yeah, and I'll give kind of as we were talking about that, some names kind of creep through my mind. I mean, I really do think Irv Smith could be in for a monster season. Can't stress that enough. Really interesting to see how the Giants use Evan Ingram and Kyle Rudolph. I think Kyle Rudolph was really underrated, his impact he had on the Vikings, especially in the red zone, somebody there. But a guy that you didn't mention that I thought that you might, Cole Kmet. I think he being the number 1 tight end taken off the board last year in the draft. I mean, I'm just confused why they brought back Jimmy Graham, who's 34 years old. And really, I mean, he's all right. But, to me, he's like another Jared Cook. I think Cole Kmet was finding his stride towards, down the stretch. And I don't really know why, they brought back Jimmy Graham. But if they give him the opportunity to grow with Justin Fields, I'm really excited for that tandem.